Hello, welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things royal. And today I wanted to talk about Tiara-gate. What happened? I feel like this story has been covered so many times, but I kind of wanted to have my perspective on it and I guess my research because I was so interested in this story and I was wondering what actually happened and hopefully give better clarity, hopefully, as to what may have happened. So grab your cup of tea and enjoy the video. Little background story. As you know, or if you don't know, I'll just go through it quickly, what went on with Meghan's tiara prior to her wedding. So there were speculations going on during that time that the Queen Elizabeth, had offered Meghan the Queen Mary bandeau, which is what she was wearing on her wedding day, the very simple bandeau with the diamonds and the crystals, and to which Meghan wanted the emerald tiara instead, which was speculated to be worn by Princess Eugenie on her wedding that year. But Meghan was advised against it because the Queen's personal dresser, Angela Kelly, said that due to the jewels having ties to Russian origin, it was probably best not to wear that specific tiara. To which Harry then allegedly made a fuss and said, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. It was also speculated that the Queen said to Harry, Meghan cannot have whatever she wants. She gets what tiara is given by me. So that was a story that was going on at that time, and I thought that happened as well from what I read online. More recently, now we have details into the accounts written by various authors, investigative journalists. Even Harry himself wrote a book about this, and I think to clear up what was going on because Meghan and Harry wasn't particularly happy that Meghan was considered a bridezilla at that time. I basically went through Harry's book, like that excerpt regarding the tiara. I looked at Tom Bower's book. I read some excerpts from Valentine Low's Courtier's book. I was hoping to see if there was, any overlap between the books, what were the similarities, and hopefully come to a conclusion as to what I think happened. All right, so let's look at Harry's book first. Now, in Harry's book, Spare, he basically refuted the whole claims of saying what Meghan wants, Meghan gets, and the whole emerald tiara situation. This is what he said. Shortly before the wedding, Granny reached out. She offered us access to her collection of tiaras. It took place inside Granny's private dressing room. 5 tiaras were arrayed on the table, and Granny directed Meg to try on each one before a full-length mirror. And then he goes on to describe that one was all emeralds, one was aquamarines. So a week later, we contacted Angela and we asked her to please send the chosen tiara so we can practice putting it on. He then goes on about how the Queen and Kate advised the two to have a dress rehearsal with the tiara just because the way that the tiara is sewn onto the hair, it can be a bit complicated. So he wrote that they advised him to have a practice session prior to the wedding. He wrote, Angela didn't respond to any of our messages. We kept trying. No response. When we finally reached her, she said the tiara would require an orderly and a police escort to leave the palace. He then continued, that sounded a bit much, but all right, I said. If that's protocol, let's find an orderly and a police officer and get the ball rolling. Time was running out. Inexplicably, she replied, can't be done. Her schedule was too busy. She was being obstructive, obviously, but for what reason? We couldn't even hazard a guess. Harry then calls Angela Kelly, a troublemaker and didn't want her as an enemy. He basically then accused her of being skilled at planting stories. Well, apparently everyone's planting stories. It's like he thinks that there's a story planting boogeyman out there, out to get him every 2 seconds. Gosh, this guy is living in paranoia. Now that's Harry's account of the situation. So there was no fuss regarding the tiara chosen by Meghan. Now in Tom Bower's book, the investigative journalist, in his book Revenge, he wrote that Meghan was invited to a secure room in the palace where she was presented with the tiara collection, to which Meghan had her eyes on the emerald tiara. Angela told Meghan and Harry that its Russian origins made it unsuitable. Harry became angry. He was downright rude, the Times told. Angela then reported the exchange to the Queen, and then the Queen, had a word with Harry, and that he couldn't speak to Angela that way. Shortly before the wedding, Meghan's hairdresser flew in from New York to rehearse his work around the tiara. Meghan asked if the tiara be delivered to the stylist's room. Angela Kelly refused and said that tiaras were not released for hairdressing rehearsals. Harry then threw a fit, basically like a child, of course, and said, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." So that's Tom Bow's version of the story. Again, kind of overlapping a bit with Harry's in terms of Angela not providing them with the tiara, potentially due to protocols. But now in Daily Mail's interview with Valentine Low, another journalist, he also confirmed that Meghan was provided with several tiaras and was free to choose whichever one she liked. The problem, which then came later, was when she wanted to do the fitting for her hair. Again, with the hair situation. Meghan's hairdresser was in town and needed a tiara for the fitting. Harry and Meghan demanded that the fitting was done that day, and Angela, who was basically the gatekeeper who controlled the access to the room, which housed the royal jewels, said that she was unavailable that day. According to Valentine Low's book, Courtiers, Valentine wrote that the Duke of Sussex was furious and thought that Angela was being obstructive. Angela said that she had to abide by protocols as these jewels are kept under very tight lock and key. The author also wrote that Prince Harry put pressure on Angela to bend the rules and use some fairly fruity language when addressing her. Now, that doesn't sound very nice. And again, that kind of overlaps with what Tom Bower said, how Prince Harry wasn't speaking to her respectfully. And, if I was Angela and Prince Harry was throwing a fit and using certain language towards me, I'd be upset too, and I would not want to return their calls. Just saying. And I could understand why Angela would go to report that to the Queen and have the Queen speak to Harry about his language and about how he treated the staff. Valentine wrote that the Queen was very upset after Harry told the hairdresser, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." Okay, so it looks like the whole "what Meghan wants, Meghan gets" again aligns with both Tom Bower and Valentine Low, that basically Harry and Meghan wanted the tiara to be delivered to the hairdresser for the rehearsal. But when Angela had to carry out protocols and said no, that's when Harry said, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets," not in regards to Meghan wanting to choose the emerald tiara. Now, I'm just going to go through briefly some of my speculations and what I think, but they wanted the tiara to be delivered to their hairstylist's room, like where potentially it might not be secured. These tiaras aren't worth thousands, 100,000. They're worth millions. And some of them hold, or most of them hold, very historical importance to them. And to see that Harry was like, it seems a bit much for them to need police escort, that just shows how entitled he is to think that he can just snap his fingers and ask, "You know what, I can do whatever I want." First of all, these tiaras, when they're loaned out from the Queen, they're not given as a gift. The Queen doesn't gift them. I mean, she says gift, but it's actually loaned. But the ownership itself is always with the monarch. The Queen, or the monarch, can loan it out for a certain period of time or a very extensive period of time. But again, it's owned by the monarch at the end of the day. So for them to demand access to the tiara whenever they wanted and hopefully bend the rules in terms of protocol, yeah, like I said, it just goes to show how immature and how entitled they are. I can suspect that, having the police escort isn't just having one police car. I'm assuming it takes multiple police cars, a lot of planning just to get these jewels delivered. It's not just like, I'm going to call up the police officer and have him pick it up, put it into his car and, take it to me. No. I believe it's actually a lot more than that and requires a lot more planning. Anyways, as for the emerald tiara that Meghan wanted, I'm personally on a fence about that, thinking, did it even happen? Here's why I think maybe it might not have happened, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I want you guys to tell me later on in the comments. So there are very few tiaras that I could think of that have emerald jewels that are currently in the royal collection at this stage. And first one is the Gravel Emerald Kokoshnik, worn by Princess Eugenie on her wedding day in October 2018. That is the one that everyone suspected that Meghan wanted. So this particular tiara is Russian in style, but actually it's not Russian in origin or creation. It was actually made by a French jeweler, Boucheron, can't even pronounce it, Boucheron, in Paris between 1919 to 1921. It was then purchased by the Queen Mother in 1942, but hasn't been worn in public until Princess Eugenie wore it on her big day in 2018. So that kind of aligns with Scooby-Doo's book, Finding Freedom, where he said that Meghan and the fashion designer at Givenchy looked through archival images of different tiaras while developing the concept for Meghan's bridal look. So realistically, that kind of eliminates the fact that Meghan might have had this specific tiara in mind prior to her appointment with the Queen, where she was able to choose her tiaras, because there was actually no photos of this tiara being worn in public by other royals prior to Eugenie wearing it on her wedding day. So I don't know how they could have seen archival pictures, and I don't think the Queen would have provided her with a booklet of tiaras to choose from if she was only given 5. So yeah, I don't think it was this tiara that she wanted or had in mind. And Harry also mentioned that the tiara presented to Meghan was all emeralds, which this one is not. It's not all emeralds. So then the next tiara with emeralds would have been the Vladimir tiara, which did have Russian origins, where it was smuggled out of Russia during the Russian Revolution, or during that time. The tiara was commissioned by Duchess Marie, married to Grand Duke Vladimir Alexandrovich of Russia, the third son of Tsar Alexander II of Russia. So it was smuggled out of Russia by Duchess Marie herself, in which she then passed away, but the tiara was passed on to her granddaughter. Her granddaughter then sold the tiara to Queen Mary in 1921. This tiara initially had pearl drops instead of emerald drops, and some of the pearls were missing, so the tiara was slightly damaged. So what has happened was Queen Mary might have had it restored and then added the emerald drops to it. So Queen Elizabeth II, who then inherited the tiara in the 1950s, in there around that time, she wore this tiara several times to many occasions. So the idea of having concerns over its Russian origins didn't really make sense to me, considering if it was such a concern, why would the Queen wear it regularly to state events and diplomatic receptions? Just saying. Meghan might have had this tiara in mind, prior to coming to the appointment with the Queen. So she might have seen pictures of it. She might have requested for it. Queen might have turned her down and said that she only could choose from the 5 tiaras that were provided and were set in front of her. So that was, for me, that kind of ruled out the whole concerns about the Russian origins. On top of that, I highly doubt as well that this tiara was actually presented to Meghan to choose from, mainly because the Queen wore this tiara quite regularly, again, to state events and diplomatic receptions. The last time she wore it was in 2019, and the time before that was 2015. And she wore it multiple times before that even. It's said that a lot of the royals the female royals in the British royal family don't actually share tiaras. So that's why you see that Catherine and Duchess Sophie and Queen Camilla, they don't actually wear the same crowns or share the crowns. They get loaned a set of tiaras. I just said crowns, didn't I? They get loaned a set of tiaras in which they could wear and choose from. However, they don't, wear each other's tiaras that were loaned to them by the Queen. So if the Queen was wearing it regularly, I don't think she would have provided it for Meghan to wear. On top of that, this particular tiara holds, it's older, and it holds greater historical importance in terms of its origin, its history, and therefore its value. So I don't think this tiara was offered to Meghan at all. The Queen has several older, historical, fragile tiaras, and I'm just speculating this, but I found that most of the, like I said, the older heirlooms, the tiaras with more historical values, they are mostly worn by the Queen herself. So I highly doubt that Meghan was, provided with this specific tiara to wear on her wedding day. And if it was presented, let's just say, and then presented to her, but they advised her not to wear it, why even give it to her? It doesn't even make sense to provide her with tiaras in which you're just then going to say, oh, actually, no, you shouldn't choose it because it has Russian origins. Doesn't make sense to me. But the whole idea of having Russian origins, and that's why they advised against it, for me personally, I don't think that happened. I do believe that Harry and Meghan kicked up a fuss because they wanted the tiara on for their dressing rehearsal. Because how we've seen them in the past few years, something doesn't go their way, they stomp their feet, cross their arms and sulk and say, oh, like, everyone hates us, everyone's out to get us, we did no wrong. Like, honestly, they never really look at the other side of the picture to be like, hey, this person might be busy, hey, this protocol prevented us from having that tiara for the rehearsal. Just because Angela said no to them in terms of delivering that tiara to them or the hairdresser, they think that Angela has a vendetta against them, when in reality she's probably just following protocols. Again, these jewelries aren't hers, so if she lost them or she didn't follow protocols, something happened to them, you betcha she would have lost her job. And we don't know if Harry told her about wanting that tiara on the day. We don't know if he actually told her in advance. We don't know if he said, hey, you know what, we need the tiara right now. The hairdresser's coming from wherever he's coming from, flying in from wherever, and we need the tiara. We don't know if Angela said to them, look, I'm really busy right now. This requires a lot of planning, police escort, etc., etc. I can't just get it done out of the blue. We don't know. Because I just feel like Harry tells half the story. He always paints everyone as a bad light by putting what they said, by putting what they did, but he never writes anything about himself, what he said realistically. It's always, and it's kind of similar, I'm feeling this is kind of similar to that situation with the whole William and Harry, where he would say that, his brother pushed him, whatever, like, they got into like an argument, his brother said this, but it's kind of like leading up to it, what did you say to make Prince William so upset? What did you do? I have a feeling that they did get upset over the fact that they couldn't have the tiara, and Harry then said, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. I do believe that happened, but that's just my opinion. And some people might say, hey, look, sewing on the crown is difficult. So as you know, like, the crown isn't just placed on the royal's head. It's actually, I think there was like I think they get weaved on. So they have like a strip that goes across the royal's crown, like the head. And then the tiara itself is actually sewn on to that strip or that weave. But if you zoom into pictures of royals wearing the tiara, like, you can really zoom into it, you can actually see a little weave and they just sew it on. So I understand that, you want it for the dress rehearsal. So what the hell do you do? Well, James Price, the man responsible for styling the Princess of Wales' hair on her wedding day, confessed that he used a fake £10 tiara for the hair dress rehearsal, as the actual tiara couldn't be used for practice session at the salon. And you can just search this up yourself. Search James Price, Kate Middleton tiara hair, and you'll see articles from that time. If Princess Catherine's hairdresser can come up with the idea of just sewing the tiara, like just using a fake tiara for the dress rehearsal, then why can't Meghan's hairdresser do the same thing, or hairstylist do the same thing? Better yet, why do Meghan and Harry think they can demand access to the tiara whenever they please or whenever they want? Whether the Queen presented Meghan with emerald tiaras that we have yet to see on the day when Meghan was picking out her tiaras, I'm not sure. But so far, there was only 2 emerald tiaras that I can think of that's in the royal collection. So anyways, it's a lot of information. But I hope that was interesting. I hope you learned something new. Let me know what you think happened with the Tiara-gate drama. Take care.